My name is Christian Toman. I am the Senior Vice President for First Option Bank, and I run our trust department. And with me today is Mark Roberts, who's the owner of Affinity Asset Management. And step 3 of our Community Cafe trio is Glenn Stockton, who's not on the call today. But Glenn Stockton is an attorney with Stockton & Stern in Gardner, Kansas. So today we had decided that we were going to talk a little bit about required minimum distributions and Roth conversions. And I think maybe the best place for this to start, Mark, is for us to talk about the Secure Act, which was passed in December of last year. Obviously, the rules changed for distributions with the Secure Act, but there were a lot of other pieces that went with it. So maybe let's start with you discussing what the rules of required minimum distributions are and how that affects our customers.
So I kind of, when I'm talking with folks, I sometimes interchange my words and say RMD, which means required minimum distribution. Sometimes I say 72 rules. It's the same thing. It starts at 72. This is the first time in my entire career this has ever changed. It's always been age 70 and a half when the RMD rules start. So this is one of those new rules that President Trump signed at the end of last year to where it pushes it back for folks, and the RMD rules start at 72 instead of 70 and a half. The rule is kind of simple. It's basically by the time you're 72, you are required to take a minimum withdrawal out of their accounts. And I'm talking about 401ks, IRAs, tax qualified retirement accounts. The kind of accounts that you typically would have at work. You're saving money in it per paycheck. The employer matches. Money's been growing and growing and growing, tax deferred all these years. So the topic of today's webinar here for you and I is why can income taxes go up when we retire? Well, why it can go up is because of this rule, the RMD rule. And you are required to take a withdrawal. The IRS will tell you how much it is. It's a simple formula, 2 things. How old are you and how much money do you have in those kind of retirement accounts, those IRAs and those 401k kind of accounts? And that'll determine a formula. And it's just about 4% or so, but every year it goes up. The requirement goes up because typically your balance is growing over time. Your age is also going up over time. So it's kind of a formula that causes higher withdrawals each year, causes you to take more and more out, meaning therefore more and more income taxes. That's why hence the topic here. So people, when you take money out, you're going to pay taxes. The IRS doesn't care if you need the money, want to spend it or not, or you're just going to be forced to take it out and save it. The problem with the RMD rules is if you don't take the withdrawal that they tell you to and pay taxes, they're going to impose a 50% penalty on every dollar that you were supposed to withdraw but didn't. So I find folks who have like 2, 3, 4 different IRAs themselves, you are required to take a withdrawal from the total, not from each one, because the IRS doesn't care if you take a little withdrawal from each one to reach the total RMD amount. They just want you to take the RMD. So you could take it from 1, 2, or all 4 IRAs. It doesn't matter. But they want you to take it out. So they want you to start paying your taxes. And if you don't, you're going to get hit with a 50% penalty. So that's kind of the gist of the RMD rules. If that RMD rule didn't exist, I think it'd be a very different way to plan for the future for what we do with our clients and kind of how we manage things to kind of minimize taxes. So that's kind of some of the rules on RMDs, but there's also been let's just say some negative aspects of RMDs or negative aspects of the Secure Act. So Chris, how are you describing that to your customers, your clients on these new rule changes?
Well, you mentioned the 70 and a half, 72. That obviously to me was a very good decision. To me, it simplified things. If you turn 70 and a half in the first half of the year, it's different than if you turn in the second half of the year. It was very confusing for people. Making it 72 made a lot of sense. The estimated cost of the Secure Act and the other aspects that were put into there was roughly $1.75 billion. In order to pay for that, they changed the way that the inherited IRA or stretch IRA worked. It used to be that if I inherited an IRA from my father, for example, that I could stretch the distributions from that IRA out over my lifetime.
Can you avoid that? Can you get that inheritance and leave it alone and let it grow for your future?
No. Yes and no. You can, but they decided that they were going to attack That was the area that they were going to attack to raise tax revenue to pay for the rest of the act.
What we call an I gotcha.
Exactly. And to me, that was the biggest mistake or detriment to the legislation that was passed. One of the things that was designed to happen with the Secure Act was to allow small companies to be able to pool their resources and build 401ks together. Basically, you have a small business, I have a small business, we've got the ability to pool those resources, create a 401k where maybe you were not in a position, you were too small to have a 401k, I was too small to have a 401k. Between the two of us, we could. The other thing that it did is it opened up or made it easier for 401ks to use annuity products. And so in doing that, to me, that was a mistake, and they decided to pay for opening that up. The cost of that is being paid for by the beneficiary of the IRA. So whereas before I was able to stretch that IRA distribution out over my lifetime, now I don't have to take anything. My father dies this year, I don't have to take anything for 10 years. Used to be I had to immediately.
You can just let it sit and grow, right. Let it grow for all 10 years.
Right.
And by the 10th year of death, what happens?
That money has to come out of the IRA at year 10.
All at once.
Right, correct.
And all the taxes all in 1 year.
Whether it's a Roth or an IRA, doesn't matter, it comes out. However, you have to pay the taxes all in that year that you take it out if it's a traditional IRA.
So a traditional IRA, you're kind of almost better off to stagger it out, take a little withdrawal every year for 10 years. So you're minimizing the massive tax effect and just trying to pay 1/10 of the tax for 10 years. If you wait 10 years, hopefully it's going to grow. It's going to be bigger. You can have all of that tax on a bigger dollar amount all in 1 year. So that could be the negative side of it.
There's a couple of planning tools that are used now, and I'm starting to see documents that come to us. We're a trust department, so we take a look at estate planning documents, and we're in place to manage people's assets after they're gone. So our job is to take care of the beneficiaries. We are starting to see in those documents the creation of what are called retirement trusts, where there's a trust, basically a separate trust that's created within the estate planning documents designed to administer the effects of a retirement plan, whether it be an IRA, whether it be a 401k, whatever the case is. Basically, those assets are considered part of that retirement trust, and we as a trustee are then put in position to manage those distributions for the beneficiaries and make tax decisions for them that are going to benefit them throughout their lives. One of the other things that I think is a missed opportunity for people. A lot of people are charitably inclined. They contribute money to charitable foundations. They contribute money. They send money to the Cancer Foundation. They have their own charitable foundations, community foundations, whatever the case is, and they're making those payments from their own accounts. They should be making those distributions directly from their IRAs, because when you get to the required minimum distribution phase that you discussed, number one, that counts as part of your required minimum distribution. So it reduces the amount that you have to take out of your IRA, and it reduces the amount of tax that you pay in that year. But we're starting to see the creation of more charitable trusts using IRA assets as opposed to other assets. Used to be that you would always use the other assets because of the step up in basis. You contribute that, you're missing the capital gains portion. Capital gains tax is typically cheaper than income tax. So now people are starting to use their income taxable items, their IRAs, to fund their charitable accounts, which is
you find that when you're talking to clients who are 72 and older who have RMDs, you go out of your way to start asking them questions. If they don't bring it up to you already, like, do you give money to charity, church, or something like that? Because if you do, we don't want you to just write a check like you normally have been. Let us take it straight from your IRA accounts, your retirement accounts, and send it directly over to charity, because that will help offset what your RMD requirements are. It'll help satisfy some of the RMD requirements. And when you give money to charity, of course, it's not taxable. You get a tax deduction in essence.
Because we're a trust department and we're really kind of built to handle that fiduciary aspect for people, that's kind of how we look at things, as opposed, yes, we manage investment assets, but our primary function is in tax planning and planning for beneficiaries and figuring out what the best way to move somebody's goals forward are for the rest of their life and for their kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, et cetera.
Well, just listen to you think, I just thought of a great topic that we can have for a future community cafe. I think is more geared more towards you and Glenn. And you can actually talk about charitable giving, specifically charitable giving, and have a whole conversation just on how to use your retirement accounts to satisfy R&D a little bit like we're talking about here today, but to talk about you can build into your will, build into your beneficiaries, build into your trust for your estate plan, how if you want to leave money to charity upon your death, it's important not to just list the charity and how much the charity gets. It's super important to list what accounts you have that'll be specifically earmarked to go to charity, because you don't want to just give charity any money from death. You want to give them the IRA type money. Therefore, the way I look at it is what we want to give our charities at death reduces what goes to our kids. So let's at least give assets that are taxable to our kids, give that stuff away to charity, because charity doesn't pay taxes on that. So giving IRA type dollars, 401k type dollars away at death. So that might be a really good topic to have for future talk.
It's actually charitable giving is what we were going to talk about 2 weeks from today. But it's interesting that you say that, because a lot of times I get the question, what does it cost to have a third-party trustee, an independent trustee, which is, obviously they're asking how much I'm going to charge for my services. And I understand that question. But our primary responsibility is to handle those things. And what you just said makes sense in 2020, but what does it look like in 2025? And how has the landscape changed in 2035? And what happens if the distributions to your kids look different 15 years from now than they look today? You're making plans today based upon how things look today. Our job is to take a look at, okay, let's start planning today to figure out what that looks like 15 years from now, and how do we incorporate tax law changes and estate planning law changes? How does that all factor in? And our job is to be able to take what you want today and make sure that it works 15 years from now. Interesting.
One of the things I've noticed, Chris, is somebody like yourself has never been my competition, because you guys do so many different things at a bank that I can't do as a financial advisor. But so all the other advisors that are out there, they don't really ever talk to clients about tax planning or tax strategies or what to expect down the road with taxes.
Right.
And when the Secure Act came, it was not like giving us advance notice. It rolled out at the end of December, and then that's when we found out all about it. And okay, going from 70.5 to 72, that's kind of a cool thing for all of our clients who are alive. But for our clients who inherit this money, it's really kind of clobbered them. It's an I got you moment. And IRS is like, hey, we're going to make it nice for you for a year and a half, but we're going to clobber your kids and force all these taxes out in a very quickly period of time. And so it just makes all the planning that we have been doing with folks on Roth IRA conversions over the past make even more sense now. So let's shift that, because I want to kind of bring up, we talked about some of the problems with RMDs.
Mm-hmm.
What I see as one of the solutions, or one of the, let's say, the benefits of RMDs is the ability to do what's called Roth IRA conversions. I don't know about you, Chris, but I find a lot of folks who are retired who talk to me about Roth conversions, even if they're working in their later years of working, they'll say, I'm not eligible. And as soon as they say that, they're really talking about Roth IRA contributions, because Roth IRA contributions have rules. Roth IRA conversions don't have rules. There's no,
well, they've changed.
Yeah. No age limit, no job limit, no dollar amount limit.
Right.
But I'm trying to remember, they got rid of all those rules in Roth conversions, but do you remember when that was?
It's been probably 8 years.
2006. I was thinking 2006 is what I had in my head.
I was thinking it was more like, and obviously that shows kind of how this landscape has changed. I had it in my mind that it was somewhere around 2010, 2011 that those rules changed.
So that probably changed after the big 2008 market crash and recession that we had there. Might have been one of the things that came out to kind of make things better for the economy and come up with stuff like that. You're probably right. I don't remember that exact time, but I know I've been talking about Roth conversions for all these years. And what I try to share with folks is on a Roth conversion, since the RMD rule exists and you have to take withdrawals, you're going to have to pay taxes. The downside is it's forcing you to do something that you may not want. It causes your taxes to go up. It causes your Social Security tax bracket to go up. It causes your Medicare premiums to go up. This is like a lot of negatives here that
Mhm.
start happening when we're 72 and for every year for the rest of our life. So when you do Roth conversions, the goal there is to save taxes three ways. One, save it while mom and dad are alive together. Two, save taxes to the surviving spouse, because one spouse will most likely die first, the other spouse inherits the money, but the surviving spouse changes from filing a joint tax return to filing a single tax return, and single people get hit harder with taxes. So Roth conversions early on in life helps the surviving spouse save taxes. And then number three, we're able to pass down a better inheritance to kids and grandkids because inheriting IRAs is tax-free for them, whereas inheriting IRAs is taxable to them.
Right.
So we teach people to take money now and let's willingly pay taxes on taking money out of an IRA. I'm not saying take it out to spend it. I'm saying take it out, pay a little tax, and move it over here to a Roth IRA. And if we do that, we're going to butt heads with your CPA. So we build out the plan, but we always say before we implement, do me a favor, go check with your CPA, have them double check some numbers for this year. And I'm going to tell you in advance, they're probably going to tell you this is a bad idea because CPAs, they kind of think a lot of times with what's going to benefit you today and primarily what's going to benefit last year's tax return. That's kind of what they're dealing with. So we're trying to help people save taxes for like the next 20 years of their life and then what passes down to their kids. And assuming no tax increases, I think with a $22 trillion deficit plus this big old stimulus package and this major recession that we're going to go into, we're all going to eventually have to have a tax increase at some point. And we know that. And then when that happens, compounding with the R&D rules, it's a recipe for a lot of taxes. So doing Roth conversions is to get out ahead of that and plan and just know you'll pay tax. I'm just going to show you how to pay a whole lot less in taxes. So the biggest thing I try to tell folks on Roth conversions, there's no rules. We can convert as much as you want, as much as you're willing to pay tax on. We can convert as much as you want every year. And we can reevaluate year by year. And as your situation changes, we'll adjust our planning. In this case, like the Secure Act, when tax law changes come in, we'll just make our adjustments. We'll make our adjustments moving forward. And we can just work with what the laws are at that time.
Mhm.
So while the laws are what they are right now in Roth conversions, we try to take advantage of that.
Right. It's interesting. This is one of the places that philosophically you and I have differed in years past. I've been more in line with the CPA that has said, let's keep taxes to a minimum this year and let's push that tax burden into the future with the anticipation that individuals are going to pay a smaller percentage of tax in the future than they pay today. That completely changed with the Secure Act. And so beginning in January, I absolutely switched gears with that because typically now that money's being forced out to that next generation, it's typically being forced out in their highest earning years. In the years where they're paying 30+% in income tax, that's the year that they're going to have to take large distributions from IRAs. So you're absolutely right. I believe the Roth conversion, the Secure Act to me, reinforced the need for more Roth conversion. I'm also dealing with an individual right now, advising him on, he's got a rather large IRA. And so we're doing some net realized appreciation changes for him and creating a charitable foundation. Pretty intricate case, but that is a perfect case that if somebody had started doing Roth conversions 10, 15 years ago, and had slowly moved that money from point A to point B, moved it out of IRAs and into Roth IRAs, they'd be in a much better position today. And you had mentioned the deficit. That is the place that I think is going to be attacked. That's the sweet underbelly as far as the IRS is concerned. That's the place that we can attack, raise rates, and really not get a lot of political pushback, because you're typically talking people that are in their 70s and 80s that don't really play in political games. They don't earn money anymore. They're the ones that are living on retirement, and I think that's where your tax increase next one's going to come from. That's who they're going to go after.
That's always I've said, Chris, all the years I've known you, and I just love doing this community cafe right now with you and Glenn. It's a way to force us to talk on a regular basis, a couple of times a week, do these community cafes and just share and learn from each other, people who have crossover in each other's industries. So we do some similar stuff, we do some different things, and just learn from each other through all of our client experiences, because I just find time after time, the clients that come to us, they just, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And they don't always know what questions to ask. And so one of the things I love about you is how you're proactive at talking to clients and telling them things that they didn't ask about. Of course, you're always going to answer their questions. I answer their questions, but you always give them other things that, hey, you need to be considering this. And that's kind of how I do things. So it's important that we're proactive with folks. And I find that most people with their financial advisors, whoever they are, they probably have a good relationship. And that's kind of a key, is having somebody that you trust and like. But it's wondering, am I getting everything? Is there stuff I'm not getting that I'm supposed to be getting? More than money management, like this, tax planning strategies way in advance. This lady I mentioned that was a referral to me that I talked with yesterday. She says in all her years of having a financial advisor, never once was it ever mentioned to do Roth conversions. And had she at least a little bit over time, it'd been a substantial difference in what her assets are today and a substantial difference in tax savings. So, hey, Chris, before we go on, I see a couple of messages that are coming in on questions. Trisha's asking here, wants me to repeat. Yes, Trisha, inheriting an IRA is income taxable to the kids. No way to avoid it. Now, they will inherit it. So let's just keep it simple. You have a $100,000 IRA, you die, you have just one child. Just to keep it simple, your one child will get the $100,000. They don't have to pay the tax on the $100,000 right now. They can start taking money out of that IRA right now, pay the tax, and resave it into their own accounts. So when it goes from mom and dad's IRA, it's going to go to child's IRA. It's called a beneficiary IRA, is what it's called. And that way it separates kids' inherited IRA money from kids' own IRA monies. So when they get that IRA, yes, it's going to be taxable money, but they have 10 years. That's the new Secure Act. They have 10 years to pay that tax. They can do 1/10 of it every 10 years. They can hold off and pay the whole thing all at once in the 10 years. They can do it whatever they want to, but the whole IRA has to be liquidated and all pay tax by the end of the 10th year from death. So regular IRAs, 401ks, TSPs, 403bs, TSAs, all that stuff is taxable. Roth IRAs are not.
Right.
I just want to get that clarified.
Right, and there's one more piece, and she may have been talking about estate taxes. And let's just touch on that real quick, because that's a different tax. 99% of the people you deal with are not going to be subject to the estate tax. Right now, it's a $23 million exemption.
Is it 23 million for one person, or is it 23 million with a trust in place?
Well, it's 23 million combined. You have
combined if they have a trust.
It used to be prior to 2008ish, 2007, 2008. Each person had their own exemption. Beginning then, they actually made it so that was a portable piece where a husband and wife, whether husband owned the asset or wife owned the asset, between the two of them, they had that exemption. I would expect that, depending on the outcome of the election in November, I would expect that law to change. At some point in time, that's going to change. So if you're dealing with an estate that has a potential estate tax liability in the future, I would suggest to you that any changes that you're going to make, you should be making between now and the election, because that's going to be one of the other places that gets attacked.
Totally agree. And when you also agree that when you're talking with folks about these issues, you can't plan for what we think a future tax change might be.
Right.
Really plan for what the taxes are today, discuss what might be a possibility to change down the road, but you don't need to change your planning until that law actually goes into effect.
Right. If a plan is done well, it leaves open the ability for you to move from point A to point B, depending on how the law changes, without having to completely go in and rewrite everything. Now, I've seen trust documents where something is so specific that a tax law change creates the need for a complete rewrite of your estate planning documents. I would say that, and you and I have both dealt with Glenn, that Glenn does a very good job of that, but most estate planning attorneys put you in a position where you have the ability to move from point A to point B without rewriting documents.
Yeah, and speaking of Glenn, I know he's not on here today with us. He'll be back on with us in 2 weeks. We got a two-parter that you and I are doing on taxes, part 1 today, part 2 next week. And then 2 weeks from now, I'll be off, you'll be on with Glenn talking about charitable stuff. Yeah, Glenn and Stock and Stern, they do a really good job on things. One of the things to add to that is it was really talking with the law firm about charitable planning where it's like the light bulb went off for me. I'm talking about taxes with people and how to minimize taxes while they're alive and how to minimize taxes when they're gone. But Glenn tells a story that most people come into him thinking that they're going to owe federal estate tax. They expect when they die, there's all these taxes we have to pay when we die. And like you said, most people don't have an estate over $23 million that they have to worry about federal estate tax. So he's always having to teach that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
However, the biggest tax that we do pay is income tax. And that's the tax that people forget about. They just think that income tax only affects me while I'm alive. They don't think about the effects that some of our assets, when we die, go to our kids and grandkids. Some assets will go tax-free and some assets are going to be taxable. It's those that are taxable. And for the baby boomer generation, which obviously is a big population, the largest asset that they own is typically all their retirement accounts.
Right.
And that's the stuff, that's the taxable stuff for the kids. So Glenn kind of sometimes is surprised them, hey, you don't have any federal estate tax, great. However, you got income tax issues. Yeah. So I can't fix that with the trust, but we can fix that with proper planning with somebody like Chris or Mark and that kind of stuff. So
right.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from you over the years. I learned a lot from Glenn on this kind of stuff over the years, and I love to share these kind of stories back with other folks.
I think it's great. Well, we are pushing up against 8:30. It's 8:28 right now. You have anything that you want to talk about in closing?
No, I just want to thank people for being on. This is something that, coronavirus has kind of forced us to stay indoors. But this is a great way to communicate with folks. And even when things try to get back to normal, whatever normal is going to look like down the road, I still want to do these community cafes and these webinars, Facebook Lives with you, not pitching products, not selling anything, and just have a conversation with a buddy in an industry that I respect and just share stories. And hopefully people can learn from the stories, learn from the little nuggets that we're getting from. And anybody wants to ever follow up and ask questions, they can hunt you down, they can hunt me down, they can hunt the Glenn Stockton, the attorney's office down, and they can ask those individual questions. And we had a couple good ones here. I see Trisha replied back that, no, she was talking about income taxes. She wasn't talking about estate taxes, but I think you and I were thinking the same thing. A lot of people are thinking estate taxes, but that was a good question. I just probably spoke too fast, Trisha. Well, do you have anything you want to finish on?
No, I just really want to say thank you for all that you do, and I really appreciate our friendship and the time that we spend together.
Absolutely, buddy. All right, well, you have a great rest of your day at the office. I'll connect with you sometime in the next couple of days.
Hold on, we have a, would you consider videoing this so when things are back to normal, we may not be and that brings up a good question. I did have somebody that emailed me yesterday that happened to watch our community cafe on YouTube. They caught it on YouTube. So I know it's your staff that is putting this together and recording it, but this is being posted to YouTube, and it's also being posted to Facebook so that you can watch them again after they're complete.
Yeah, I know this is being saved on all three of us, between you, Glenn, and myself, all three of our Facebook pages, so people can go back out there, log in and look us up and find these old videos of this. I think for my office, I think we're also going to try to store every one of these on our website. And we can certainly share that with you and Glenn, so you guys can share that on your website. It's a great question. Sometimes people aren't going to be available at 8 o'clock in the future, but they like the content and they want to kind of check it out down the road. Ooh, it's a topic I want to hear. I'm just not available at 8 o'clock. So I'll check in later when I get home and I'll look it up a different way.
My head of marketing just sent a message. We are also posting these videos to our website. So you can go to our website and search for them as well.
Good. And by the way, Chris, First Option Bank, what is the website? Is that FOB?
FirstOptionBank.com.
Whole thing spelled out, firstoptionbank.com.
Correct.
Okay. All right, buddy. Well, thank you for your time here today. It was great visiting with you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.